the dead of night, when most people sleep peacefully in their beds, some warriors write history with bullets and courage. This is the story of Admiral Sarah Chen, a woman who broke every barrier the military could throw at her, only to face her greatest test in the darkness of enemy territory. What happens when a decorated SEAL admiral, known for her strategic mind and unbreakable will, finds herself cut off from command and forced to rely on skills she hadn't used in years? What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted, and survival depends not on rank or recognition, but on pure instinct and deadly precision? This isn't just another military story. This is about a moment when everything you've trained for, everything you've sacrificed, comes down to a single night that will either make you a legend or bury you in unmarked graves. Admiral Chen had no idea that her routine inspection mission would turn into the deadliest game of cat and mouse she'd ever played. The enemy thought they knew who they were dealing with. They were wrong. The morning sun cast long shadows across the naval base in San Diego as Admiral Sarah Chen walked through the corridors she had once dreamed of commanding. At 42, she was the youngest woman ever to achieve the rank of Admiral in the Navy SEALs. But the journey to get there had been anything but easy. Her crisp uniform bore the weight of 20 years of service, countless missions, and more battles than most people could imagine. Sarah's story began in a small town in Oregon, where her father ran a hardware store and her mother worked as a nurse. Growing up, Sarah was always different from other girls her age. While they played with dolls, she was building tree forts and learning how to fix engines with her father. Her parents, Michael and Linda Chen, were immigrants from Taiwan who had worked tirelessly to give their children opportunities they never had. The Chen family wasn't wealthy, but they were rich in values. Michael had served briefly in the Taiwanese military before moving to America, and he often told Sarah stories about discipline, honor, and service. These stories planted seeds in young Sarah's mind that would eventually grow into an unshakable desire to serve her country. Sarah's childhood was marked by constant challenges that seemed to prepare her for the difficulties ahead. When she was 12, her younger brother Tommy was diagnosed with leukemia. The family spent months traveling between hospitals, and Sarah watched her parents struggle with medical bills and the emotional weight of their son's illness. During this time, Sarah learned to be strong for others, to keep going when everything seemed hopeless, and to find solutions when problems seemed impossible. Tommy recovered after 2 years of treatment, but the experience changed Sarah forever. She had seen how quickly life could change, how precious every moment was, and how important it was to fight for what mattered. These lessons would serve her well in the years to come. In high school, Sarah excelled in everything she touched. She was captain of the swim team, president of the debate club, and graduated as valedictorian. Her teachers and classmates expected her to go to an Ivy League school and become a doctor or lawyer. Instead, Sarah shocked everyone by announcing she wanted to attend the Naval Academy. The decision didn't come easily. Sarah had spent months researching different military branches and career paths. She was drawn to the Navy because of its global reach and the opportunity to serve on ships around the world. But it was the SEALs that truly captured her imagination. She had read everything she could find about these elite warriors, and she knew that was where she belonged. The Naval Academy was Sarah's first real taste of military life, and it was exactly as challenging as she had expected. The physical demands were intense, but Sarah thrived on the challenge. She woke up every morning at 5, ran 5 miles before breakfast, and spent her evenings studying tactics and strategy. Her classmates quickly learned that Sarah Chen was not someone who gave up easily. During her second year at the academy, Sarah faced her first major obstacle. A group of male cadets, led by a particularly arrogant senior named Brad Morrison, decided to make her life difficult. They would hide her equipment, spread rumors about her, and constantly question her commitment to military service. Morrison once cornered her after a particularly brutal training exercise and told her she should quit before she embarrassed herself. Sarah's response was typical of her character. Instead of complaining to her superiors or letting the harassment break her spirit, she decided to outperform everyone who doubted her. She started training harder, studying longer, and pushing herself beyond what anyone thought possible. By the end of her second year, she was ranked 3rd in her class and had earned the respect of almost everyone around her. The transformation wasn't just physical or academic. Sarah was developing the mental toughness that would define her entire career. She learned to compartmentalize emotions, to stay calm under pressure, and to make quick decisions based on limited information. These skills would prove invaluable in the years ahead. Her 3rd year brought new challenges and opportunities. Sarah was selected for a summer internship with a SEAL team based in Virginia Beach. For 8 weeks, she shadowed real SEALs on training exercises and got her first taste of what her future career might look like. The experience was everything she had hoped for and more. The SEALs she worked with were initially skeptical of the young woman from the academy, but Sarah quickly proved herself. She kept up with their grueling training schedule, asked intelligent questions, and showed the kind of mental resilience they respected. By the end of the internship, several team members told her she had what it took to succeed in their world. One night during the internship, Sarah was sitting on the beach with Chief Petty Officer Mike Rodriguez, a veteran SEAL with 15 years of experience. Rodriguez had become something of a mentor to Sarah, and she valued his opinion more than almost anyone else's. "You know, Chen," Rodriguez said, staring out at the ocean, "I've seen a lot of people come through this program over the years. Most of them are good soldiers, some of them are great warriors, but very few have that special something that makes a real SEAL." Sarah listened intently as Rodriguez continued. "You've got it, though. I can see it in how you approach problems, how you handle stress, how you treat the people around you.
If you want this badly enough, and if you're willing to pay the price, you could be one of the best."
Those words stayed with Sarah through her final year at the academy and beyond.
She graduated second in her class and was immediately accepted into SEAL training, known as Basic Underwater Demolition/SEAL, BUD/S, training. She knew that the real test was just beginning. BUD/S training was legendary for its difficulty. Located in Coronado, California, the program was designed to push candidates beyond their breaking points and identify those who had the mental and physical toughness to become SEALs. The statistics were sobering. Roughly 80% of candidates would quit before completing the program. Sarah arrived at Coronado on a Monday morning in September, carrying a single duffel bag and more determination than anyone around her could imagine. She was one of only 3 women in her class of 250 candidates, and she knew that all eyes would be on her from day one. The first few weeks of training were exactly as brutal as Sarah had expected. The instructors, led by an intimidating Master Chief named Thompson, seemed determined to make life as difficult as possible for every candidate. They ran endless miles in the sand, did thousands of push-ups and sit-ups, and spent hours in the freezing Pacific Ocean. The physical challenges were intense, but the mental games were even worse. Instructors would constantly yell at candidates, questioning their motivation and predicting their failure. They would make training exercises deliberately confusing and frustrating, then punish entire groups for the mistakes of individuals. The message was clear. If you couldn't handle this kind of pressure in training, you definitely couldn't handle it in combat. Sarah's strategy was simple but effective. She focused on one challenge at a time, never looking too far ahead or dwelling on past difficulties. When the instructors screamed at her, she listened to their words without taking their anger personally. When training exercises seemed impossible, she broke them down into smaller, manageable pieces. The most famous part of BUD/S training was Hell Week, 5.5 days of almost continuous physical activity with minimal sleep and food. Candidates were expected to function normally while running on empty, and many of the program's dropouts occurred during this period. Sarah approached Hell Week with the same methodical mindset she brought to everything else. She knew that the experience would be miserable, but she also knew it was temporary. Every time she felt like quitting, she reminded herself why she was there and what she hoped to accomplish. Sarah and her boat crew were participating in a midnight exercise that involved carrying heavy rubber boats over sand dunes in the darkness. The temperature had dropped to just above freezing. Everyone was exhausted, and several candidates had already quit. As Sarah's team struggled with their boat, one of her teammates, a large man named Johnson from Texas, suddenly collapsed. He was suffering from hypothermia and couldn't continue. The instructors gathered around Johnson and began the process of removing him from training. In that moment, Sarah made a decision that would define her entire career. Instead of focusing on her own survival, she helped carry Johnson to the medical tent and stayed with him until the medics arrived. She missed nearly an hour of training time, putting her own chances of success at risk to help a teammate. When Sarah returned to the exercise, Master Chief Thompson was waiting for her. She expected to be punished for leaving her assigned position, but Thompson's response surprised her. "Chen," he said quietly, "that's exactly what I wanted to see. Anyone can be tough when they're only worried about themselves. Real SEALs take care of their teammates, even when it costs them something." Sarah completed Hell Week and continued through the rest of BUD/S training. She graduated in the top 10% of her class and was officially designated as a Navy SEAL. The ceremony was attended by her parents, her brother Tommy, and Chief Rodriguez, who had driven down from Virginia Beach to watch her receive her Trident pin. Her first assignment was with SEAL Team 5, based out of Coronado. Sarah spent the next 3 years learning her craft from experienced operators and participating in missions around the world. She deployed twice to Afghanistan, once to Iraq, and participated in numerous training exercises with Allied forces. Each deployment taught Sarah something new about leadership, combat, and herself. In Afghanistan, she learned to operate in mountainous terrain and work with local forces who spoke different languages and followed different customs. In Iraq, she gained experience in urban warfare and learned to adapt quickly to changing tactical situations. But it was during her second Afghanistan deployment that Sarah truly proved herself as a leader. Her team was tasked with capturing a high-value target in a remote mountain village. Intelligence suggested the target would be lightly guarded, but when Sarah's team arrived, they found themselves facing a much larger enemy force than expected. The team leader, a veteran SEAL named Lieutenant Collins, was wounded in the initial exchange of gunfire. With Collins unable to continue, command fell to Sarah, who was the next senior member of the team. She had to make split-second decisions about how to proceed with the mission while ensuring the safety of her teammates. Sarah's response was calm and decisive. She reorganized the team's approach, called for additional support, and managed to complete the mission without any casualties among her people. The high-value target was captured, and Sarah's leadership under pressure earned her a Bronze Star and recognition from her commanding officers. After 6 years as an operator, Sarah was selected for officer training. She attended the Naval War College, where she studied advanced military strategy and international relations. Her professors were impressed by her analytical abilities and her understanding of modern warfare's complexities. Upon completing her education, Sarah was promoted to lieutenant and given command of her own SEAL team. The transition from operator to officer was challenging, but Sarah adapted quickly to her new responsibilities. She discovered that she had a natural talent for strategic thinking and an ability to inspire confidence in the people under her command. Over the next decade, Sarah continued to climb through the ranks. She commanded larger units, participated in increasingly complex missions, and earned a reputation as one of the Navy's most effective special operations leaders. Her superiors began to see her as someone with the potential for very senior leadership. The path to Admiral wasn't easy, though. Sarah faced skepticism from some colleagues who questioned whether a woman could effectively command at the highest levels. She encountered political challenges within the Navy's bureaucracy and had to navigate complex relationships with civilian leaders and international partners. Through it all, Sarah remained focused on her core principles: take care of your people, complete the mission, and never compromise your integrity. These values served her well as she took on increasingly senior roles and greater responsibilities. Her promotion to Admiral came after a particularly successful tour as head of special operations for the Pacific Fleet. Sarah had overseen dozens of missions across the region and had earned praise from military leaders and civilian officials alike. When the promotion was announced, she became not just the youngest woman to achieve the rank, but also one of the most respected officers in the entire Navy. Now, walking through the corridors of her command, Admiral Sarah Chen reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a small town in Oregon to the highest levels of military leadership, she had overcome every obstacle and exceeded every expectation. But Sarah also knew that her greatest challenges might still lie ahead. The world was becoming increasingly dangerous, and the missions she commanded were growing more complex and politically sensitive. As she prepared for her next assignment, an inspection tour of forward-deployed units in a volatile region, she had no idea that everything she had learned and everything she had become would soon be put to the ultimate test. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the briefing room at Naval Special Warfare Command, studying the digital maps displayed on the large screens around her. The mission she was about to undertake seemed routine on paper, a standard inspection and assessment of forward-deployed SEAL teams operating in the disputed regions near the South China Sea. But Sarah's years of experience had taught her that no mission was ever truly routine, especially in areas where geopolitical tensions ran high. The briefing was being conducted by Captain James Mitchell, a career intelligence officer who had been working the region for over a decade. Mitchell was known for his thorough preparation and attention to detail, qualities that Sarah appreciated in the complex world of modern military operations. Admiral, as you can see from these satellite images, Mitchell began, pointing to the main screen, the situation in the region has become increasingly unstable over the past 6 months. We have 3 SEAL teams currently deployed across different forward operating bases, each dealing with unique challenges and operational requirements. Sarah studied the images carefully. The first location was a small island base approximately 200 miles southeast of the main shipping lanes. SEAL Team Alpha was stationed there, conducting surveillance and interdiction operations against suspected armed smugglers and human traffickers. The second location was a coastal facility on the mainland, where SEAL Team Bravo was working with local forces to counter insurgent activities. The third and most sensitive location was a classified forward operating post on a disputed island, where SEAL Team Charlie was conducting intelligence gathering operations. "What's the current threat assessment for each location?" Sarah asked, her mind already processing the tactical implications of what she was seeing. Mitchell switched to a different set of displays showing intelligence summaries and threat analyses. Team Alpha's area of operations has seen increased smuggling activity, but the threats remain relatively low level. Team Bravo is dealing with more significant challenges. Local insurgent groups have become more active and better equipped over the past few months. But it's Team Charlie's location that concerns us most. Sarah leaned forward as Mitchell highlighted the third location on the map. The disputed island was strategically positioned near major shipping routes and had been the subject of territorial claims by multiple nations for years. The presence of American Special Operations Forces there was highly classified and politically sensitive. Intelligence indicates that hostile forces have been probing Charlie's perimeter for the past 3 weeks, Mitchell continued. "We believe they're testing our defenses and gathering information about our capabilities. The team commander, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, has reported several suspicious incidents, but nothing overt enough to justify escalating the situation." Sarah recognized the name. Rodriguez was the son of Chief Rodriguez, the SEAL who had mentored her during her Naval Academy internship years ago. The younger Rodriguez had earned his own reputation as a skilled operator and leader. "What's the composition of each team?" Sarah asked, continuing her methodical assessment of the situation. "Team Alpha has 12 operators, Team Bravo has 16, and Team Charlie has only 8.
Mitchell replied.
Charlie's small size is deliberate. They're supposed to maintain a low profile and avoid drawing attention to their activities." Sarah noted the information but felt a slight concern about Team Charlie's limited numbers. 8 operators could handle most intelligence gathering missions, but if they faced serious opposition, they might need support quickly. "Admiral," Mitchell said, switching to a timeline display, "your inspection tour is scheduled to last 5 days. You'll spend 1 day with Team Alpha, 2 days with Team Bravo, and 2 days with Team Charlie. Transportation will be provided by helicopter and fast boat, depending on weather conditions and operational security requirements." The timeline seemed reasonable, but Sarah noticed something that bothered her. "Why am I spending only 1 day with Team Alpha but 2 days with the others?" "Team Alpha's operations are fairly straightforward," Mitchell explained. "They're performing well and don't require extensive evaluation. Teams Bravo and Charlie are dealing with more complex situations that warrant closer examination." Sarah accepted the explanation, but made a mental note to be flexible with the schedule if circumstances warranted changes. In her experience, the most important insights often came from unexpected observations and conversations. The briefing continued for another hour, covering everything from weather patterns to local political developments. Sarah asked detailed questions about each team's recent activities, their equipment status, and their relationships with local forces and officials. By the time the session ended, she had a comprehensive understanding of what she would encounter during her inspection tour. That evening, Sarah returned to her quarters to prepare for the journey. She packed light, her standard field gear, personal weapons, communication equipment, and enough supplies for a week in potentially austere conditions. As she organized her equipment, Sarah's mind wandered to the many similar preparations she had made over the years. The ritual of preparing for a mission had always been therapeutic for Sarah. There was something calming about the methodical process of checking and double-checking every piece of equipment, ensuring that everything was in its proper place and ready for use. It was a habit she had developed during her earliest SEAL training and had never abandoned even as her rank and responsibilities changed. Sarah's personal weapons were a reflection of both her training and her preferences. Her primary sidearm was a modified Sig Sauer P226, the same model she had carried throughout her operational career. The weapon had been with her through dozens of missions and had never failed her when she needed it most. Her backup weapon was a smaller Glock 19, chosen for its reliability and ease of concealment. In addition to her sidearms, Sarah packed her personal knife, a custom-made blade she had received as a gift from her team after her first successful mission as a team leader. The knife had both practical and sentimental value, representing her connection to the SEAL community and her commitment to operational excellence. As she finished packing, Sarah received a secure phone call from Admiral Robert Hayes, her immediate superior and longtime mentor. Hayes had been instrumental in Sarah's career development and was one of the few people whose advice she sought on important matters. "Sarah," Hayes said, his voice carrying the slight static of encrypted communications, "I wanted to touch base with you before you departed. I know this inspection tour seems routine, but I want you to trust your instincts out there. Sarah understood the subtext of Hayes' words. While the official purpose of her trip was to conduct standard evaluations, there were underlying concerns about the regional situation that couldn't be fully discussed over communications channels. "I'll keep my eyes open, sir," Sarah replied. "Is there anything specific I should be watching for?" "Just remember that things aren't always what they seem," Hayes said. "The region is becoming increasingly complicated, and our people on the ground are dealing with pressures we might not fully understand from here. Your job is to assess not just their tactical performance, but their overall readiness and morale." The conversation lasted only a few more minutes, but Sarah understood what Hayes was telling her. This wasn't just about inspecting teams. It was about evaluating whether American forces in the region were prepared for potential escalation of tensions. The next morning, Sarah's journey began with a flight to the first staging area, a major naval base located several hundred miles from her ultimate destinations. The flight gave her time to review intelligence reports and think through her approach to the inspections. Sarah's inspection methodology had evolved over years of evaluating units and operations. She believed in spending time with personnel at all levels, from senior officers to newest team members. She wanted to observe both planned activities and spontaneous interactions, believing that the most accurate assessments came from seeing how people behaved when they thought they weren't being evaluated. The flight also gave Sarah time to reflect on the broader implications of her mission. The South China Sea region had become increasingly tense over the past several years, with multiple nations asserting territorial claims and military buildups becoming more common. American Special Operations Forces were often the tip of the spear in such situations, gathering intelligence and maintaining presence in areas where larger military units might be seen as provocative. Upon arriving at the staging base, Sarah was met by Commander Lisa Park, the officer responsible for coordinating special operations activities in the region. Park briefed Sarah on current conditions and last-minute intelligence updates. "Admiral, the weather forecast looks good for the next few days," Park reported. "Sea conditions should be favorable for helicopter and boat transport. However, there has been increased maritime traffic in the area, including several vessels that we haven't been able to positively identify." Sarah noted the information about unidentified vessels. In the current political climate, unknown ships in the region could represent anything from innocent commercial traffic to potential intelligence gathering or military activities. "What about communications?" Sarah asked. "Will I have reliable contact with headquarters throughout the tour?" "Yes, ma'am," Park replied. "Each location has satellite communication capabilities, and you'll be carrying backup communication equipment. However, there may be brief periods during transport when communications are limited." Sarah understood the realities of operating in remote areas. Communication blackouts were common and usually not cause for concern, but they did require careful planning and coordination. The helicopter flight to Team Alpha's location took 2 hours over open ocean. Sarah used the time to review the team's personnel files and recent activity reports. Team Alpha was led by Lieutenant Commander Sarah Martinez, a veteran operator with an excellent record. The team had been in position for 3 months and had successfully interdicted several smuggling operations. As the helicopter approached the island base, Sarah got her first good look at Team Alpha's operational environment. The island was small and relatively isolated, with a single helicopter landing pad and modest facilities for the SEAL team. The position offered good observation of surrounding sea lanes but would be difficult to defend if attacked by a determined enemy. Lieutenant Commander Martinez met Sarah at the landing pad, providing a professional briefing on the team's recent activities and current status. Sarah was immediately impressed by Martinez's competence and confidence. The team leader clearly had a good grasp of her mission and the challenges her unit faced. "Admiral, we've had a productive deployment so far," Martinez reported as they walked toward the team's operations center. "We've identified and tracked 17 suspected smuggling vessels, intercepted 4 actual smuggling operations, and provided intelligence support for 3 law enforcement actions by partner nations." Sarah reviewed the team's operational logs and spoke individually with several team members. Her assessment was entirely positive. Team Alpha was well led, well equipped, and effectively executing their mission. The team's morale was high, and their operational security was excellent. After spending the day with Team Alpha, Sarah was transported by fast boat to Team Bravo's coastal facility. The journey took place at night for security reasons, and Sarah found herself enjoying the familiar sensation of high-speed boat operations. It reminded her of her early years as an operator, when such movements were routine parts of mission execution. Team Bravo's situation was more complex than Team Alpha's. The coastal facility was larger and housed 16 SEALs, but it was also located in an area with higher threat levels. Lieutenant Commander David Kim, the team leader, briefed Sarah on the challenges his unit faced. Admiral, we're dealing with a more sophisticated enemy here, Kim explained as they reviewed intelligence reports. The local insurgent groups have access to better weapons and training than we initially expected. They've also shown improved coordination and tactical awareness over the past few months. Sarah studied the reports carefully. Team Bravo had been involved in several firefights over the past month, and while they had performed well, the increasing intensity of enemy activities was concerning. What kind of support are you receiving from local forces? Sarah asked, knowing that cooperation with partner nations was crucial for long-term success. It varies, Kim replied diplomatically. Some local units are very professional and effective. Others are less reliable. We've been working to build relationships and improve coordination, but it's an ongoing challenge. Sarah spent 2 full days with Team Bravo, observing training exercises and accompanying the team on patrol operations. She was impressed by their professionalism and adaptability, but she could see the strain that constant operational tempo was placing on the unit. On her final evening with Team Bravo, Sarah had a long conversation with Kim about the broader strategic situation. The team leader's insights were valuable, and Sarah made detailed notes for her final report. Admiral, Kim said as they concluded their discussion, I hope Team Charlie is doing well. We haven't had direct communication with them in several days, but that's not unusual given their operational security requirements. Sarah noted Kim's comment about Team Charlie. The lack of communication wasn't necessarily concerning, but it was something to keep in mind during her final stop. The helicopter flight to Team Charlie's location was scheduled for early morning, taking advantage of optimal weather conditions and reduced enemy activity. As Sarah prepared for the final leg of her inspection tour, she reflected on what she had learned so far. Teams Alpha and Bravo were performing well despite significant challenges. Their leaders were competent, their personnel were motivated, and their operational results were impressive. However, both teams were operating in increasingly difficult environments, with limited support and growing enemy capabilities. As the helicopter lifted off for the disputed island where Team Charlie was stationed, Sarah had no way of knowing that her routine inspection tour was about to become something entirely different. The morning sun reflected off the ocean surface below, and Sarah reviewed her notes from the previous stops, unaware that she was flying toward a situation that would test every skill she had developed over her 20-year career. The helicopter pilot's voice came through her headset, informing her that they were 30 minutes from their destination. Sarah acknowledged the update and began preparing mentally for her evaluation of Team Charlie. She expected to find another professional SEAL team executing a difficult mission under challenging circumstances. What she would actually find was a team in crisis, an enemy that had been systematically planning an attack, and a situation that would force her to abandon her role as inspector and resume her identity as a warrior. The disputed island was about to become the scene of one of the most intense small-unit actions in recent military history, and Admiral Sarah Chen was flying directly into the center of it. Admiral Sarah Chen crouched in the shadows, studying the enemy positions through her night vision scope. The 12 hostile personnel she had counted earlier was still present around the observation post, but their alertness had decreased as the hours passed. They had posted sentries, but their positioning showed overconfidence. They clearly believed they controlled the entire island. Sarah had spent the past 2 hours conducting detailed reconnaissance of the enemy positions. She had identified patrol patterns, communication procedures, and most importantly, the location where the prisoners were being held. Through careful observation, she had confirmed that at least 4 figures were being detained in a makeshift holding area. Though she still couldn't positively identify them as the missing SEAL team members. The tactical situation remained challenging, but Sarah had developed a plan that could work. Instead of attempting a direct assault against superior numbers, she would use stealth, precision, and psychological warfare to systematically reduce the enemy's effectiveness and create an opportunity for rescue. Sarah's first objective was to eliminate the enemy's sentries without alerting the main group. The hostile forces had posted guards at 3 key positions around the observation post, each positioned to watch different approaches to the area. If Sarah could neutralize these sentries silently, she would significantly reduce the enemy's ability to detect her subsequent actions. Moving with the silent precision that had been drilled into her during decades of training, Sarah approached the first sentry position. The guard was positioned behind a rocky outcropping that provided excellent observation of the southern approach but left him vulnerable to attack from other directions. Sarah's approach took nearly 30 minutes. Every movement had to be calculated to avoid detection, and she had to account for the sentry's patrol pattern and the positions of his comrades. When she finally reached striking distance, Sarah acted with the swift efficiency that had made her legendary among her peers, The sentry never knew what hit him. Sarah's attack was silent and decisive, eliminating the threat without alerting anyone else to her presence. She carefully concealed the body and took the guard's radio and weapons, adding to her own capabilities while denying resources to the enemy. The second sentry position was more challenging to approach, but Sarah had identified a route that took advantage of the island's natural terrain features. A small ravine provided concealment for most of the distance, and a cluster of large boulders offered final approach cover. This guard was more alert than the first, regularly scanning his assigned sector and occasionally checking in with his comrades via radio. Sarah had to time her approach carefully, waiting for the right moment when the sentry's attention was focused elsewhere. When the opportunity presented itself, Sarah struck with the same deadly efficiency she had demonstrated at the first position. The second guard was eliminated without raising any alarm, and Sarah acquired additional equipment and intelligence about the enemy's communication procedures. The third sentry position was the most difficult to reach and the most dangerous to attack. The guard was positioned with excellent fields of view in multiple directions, and he was within sight of several other enemy personnel. Any mistake in Sarah's approach would likely alert the entire force to her presence. Sarah spent over an hour studying this position and developing her approach plan. She identified a narrow window of opportunity that would occur when the guard's routine patrol pattern took him to a specific location that was temporarily shielded from observation by his comrades. When the moment arrived, Sarah moved with lightning speed and absolute precision. The third sentry was eliminated just as efficiently as the first two, but this time Sarah had to work quickly to conceal the evidence of her action before other enemy personnel noticed anything unusual. With the outer security eliminated, Sarah had significantly improved her tactical position. The enemy force was now effectively blind to her movements, and she had acquired additional weapons, ammunition, and intelligence about their capabilities and procedures. Sarah's next objective was to gather more detailed intelligence about the prisoners and the main enemy force. She needed to confirm that the detained personnel were indeed the missing SEALs, and she needed to understand the enemy's immediate plans for them. Moving closer to the main enemy positions required extreme care. Sarah used every technique she had learned during her career: camouflage, silent movement, breath control, and patience. She worked her way to within 50 meters of the holding area where the prisoners were being kept. From this closer position, Sarah could finally confirm what she had hoped to discover. The prisoners were indeed Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez and 3 of his team members. They appeared to be wounded but alive, and they were being guarded by 2 enemy personnel, while the others continued their intelligence-gathering operations. Sarah could also overhear conversations among the enemy personnel, though she couldn't understand their language. However, their tone and body language suggested urgency. They appeared to be preparing to move the prisoners, possibly to evacuate the island before American reinforcements arrived. This intelligence created a new sense of urgency for Sarah's mission. If the enemy succeeded in removing Rodriguez and his team from the island, rescue would become exponentially more difficult. She needed to act quickly, but she also needed to ensure that her actions didn't result in harm to the prisoners. Sarah developed a new plan based on this latest intelligence. Instead of attempting to rescue the prisoners immediately, she would first eliminate or disable the remaining enemy personnel who were not directly guarding the SEALs. This would reduce the overall threat level and create better conditions for the actual rescue operation. The enemy personnel were scattered across the observation post area, engaged in various activities. Some were searching through captured equipment, others were maintaining communications with off-island locations, and still others were preparing equipment for what appeared to be an imminent departure. Sarah began her systematic campaign against the remaining enemy personnel. Using the weapons she had acquired from the eliminated sentries, she could engage targets from multiple positions, creating confusion about the source and nature of the attacks. Her first target was an enemy communications specialist who was operating a radio set some distance from the main group. Sarah's attack was swift and silent, eliminating the specialist and destroying the radio equipment. This severed the enemy's communication links with any off-island support and prevented them from calling for reinforcements. Sarah's next targets were 2 enemy personnel who were working together to inventory captured SEAL equipment. They were positioned in a location that provided some concealment from their comrades, making them vulnerable to Sarah's proven tactics. The attack on these 2 targets required more complex coordination, since Sarah had to neutralize both simultaneously to prevent either from alerting the others. She used a combination of thrown weapons and direct assault to eliminate both threats within seconds of each other. By now, the remaining enemy personnel were beginning to notice that something was wrong. They couldn't contact their sentries, their communications specialist wasn't responding, and several of their comrades had simply disappeared. The group's leader began issuing orders that Sarah could hear clearly. Though she couldn't understand the specific words, Sarah recognized that she had achieved what military tacticians call psychological dominance over her enemies. They knew they were under attack, but they didn't know by whom, from where, or in what strength. This uncertainty was causing them to make defensive decisions that actually made them more vulnerable to her continued attacks. The enemy leader gathered his remaining personnel into a tighter defensive formation around the prisoners. This decision provided better security against unknown threats, but it also concentrated his forces in a way that made them more vulnerable to Sarah's next phase of operations. Sarah had saved her most audacious tactic for this moment. Using techniques she had learned during advanced SEAL training, she began a psychological warfare campaign designed to further demoralize and confuse the remaining enemy personnel. Moving silently around the perimeter of their defensive position, Sarah began making sounds and creating disturbances that suggested she was part of a larger force. She threw rocks to create noise in one direction, then quickly moved to another location to create different sounds. She used captured enemy radio equipment to broadcast confusing signals and false communications. The psychological impact on the remaining enemy personnel was dramatic. Already rattled by the mysterious disappearance of their comrades, they began to panic as they perceived themselves to be surrounded by an unknown number of attackers. Their defensive discipline began to break down as individual personnel started making independent decisions about where to position themselves and how to respond to the perceived threats. This breakdown in enemy cohesion created the opportunity Sarah had been working to achieve. As the hostile personnel became increasingly disorganized and focused on threats that seemed to be coming from multiple directions, their attention to the prisoners decreased. Sarah seized this moment to execute the most critical phase of her operation. Moving with the stealth and precision that had made her legendary throughout her career, she approached the area where Rodriguez and his team were being held. The two guards assigned to watch the prisoners were clearly nervous and distracted by the chaos developing around them. They were looking outward for threats rather than maintaining focus on their primary responsibility, creating exactly the vulnerability that Sarah needed to exploit. Sarah's rescue of the imprisoned SEALs was a masterpiece of tactical execution. She neutralized both guards simultaneously, freed the prisoners, and provided them with weapons and equipment she had collected during her systematic campaign against the enemy force. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, despite his wounds and exhaustion, immediately understood the tactical situation and began coordinating with Sarah to complete the elimination of the remaining enemy personnel. The arrival of 4 additional experienced SEALs transformed the tactical balance completely. "Admiral," Rodriguez whispered as they prepared their final assault, "I can't believe you pulled this off alone. How many people did you bring with you?" Sarah's response was characteristic of her no-nonsense leadership style. "Just me, Commander." But that was all we needed. The final phase of the battle was swift and decisive. Sarah and the rescued SEALs coordinated a simultaneous attack on the remaining enemy positions from multiple directions. The hostile personnel, already demoralized and confused by Sarah's psychological warfare campaign, were unable to mount an effective defense. Within minutes, the engagement was over. The enemy force had been completely eliminated. The missing SEAL team members had been rescued, and the observation post was back under American control. Sarah had accomplished what seemed impossible, single-handedly defeating a superior enemy force and rescuing her fellow warriors. As dawn broke over the disputed island, Sarah stood among the rescued SEALs and surveyed the results of the night's operation. The evidence around her told the story of one of the most remarkable small-unit actions in modern military history. Rodriguez approached her as they prepared the site for the arrival of reinforcements and medical evacuation. "Admiral, what you did tonight, I'd never seen anything like it. How did you know it would work?" Sarah's response reflected the quiet confidence that had characterized her entire career. "Commander, I didn't know it would work, but I knew that leaving you and your people wasn't an option. Sometimes that's all the certainty you need." The helicopter sounds in the distance announced the arrival of the support Sarah had requested hours earlier. Medical personnel, additional SEALs, and intelligence specialists were en route to secure the island and care for the wounded. Sarah's mission had evolved far beyond a routine inspection tour, but she had accomplished something far more important. As she prepared to brief the incoming forces on what had occurred, Admiral Sarah Chen reflected on the night's events. She had been tested in ways she hadn't experienced in years, forced to rely on skills and instincts that had been dormant during her transition to senior leadership roles. The experience had reminded her why she had chosen the life of a warrior and why the SEAL community valued courage, skill, and loyalty above all else. The enemy had made a fatal error in underestimating what one determined American warrior could accomplish in defense of her fellow service members. That mistake had cost them everything, while Sarah and Team Charlie had survived to fight another day. The first helicopter to arrive carried a full medical team and additional SEAL operators, who had been scrambled from the nearest base when Sarah's emergency communications reached headquarters. As the aircraft touched down on the island's landing pad, Admiral Sarah Chen stood ready to brief the incoming personnel on the tactical situation and coordinate the next phases of the operation. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the senior medical officer, immediately began triaging the wounded SEALs while Sarah provided Commander Tony Morrison, the leader of the reinforcement team, with a detailed assessment of what had occurred during the night. Morrison listened intently as Sarah described the enemy's capabilities, their apparent objectives, and the intelligence that could be gathered from the aftermath of the battle. Admiral, the implications of what you've discovered here go far beyond a single tactical engagement, Morrison said as they surveyed the captured enemy equipment. This level of sophistication and planning suggests a much larger operation than we initially understood. The enemy force that had attacked Team Charlie was too well equipped and too well informed to be an isolated threat. The weapons, communications gear and tactical equipment they had brought to the island indicated access to military-grade resources and detailed intelligence about American operations in the region. As the medical team worked to stabilize Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez and his wounded team members, Sarah began documenting the physical evidence that would be crucial for the intelligence analysis to follow. She photographed enemy equipment, collected communications devices, and carefully mapped the positions where the battle had taken place. The intelligence value of what Sarah had captured was immense. Enemy communications equipment contained encrypted data that would provide insights into their command structure and operational plans. Weapons and equipment bore markings that would help identify their sources and supply chains. Most importantly, the tactical approaches the enemy had used revealed sophisticated knowledge of SEAL operations and procedures. Admiral, Rodriguez said as the medical team prepared him for evacuation. There's something you need to know about what happened before you arrived. The enemy didn't just attack us. They were specifically looking for something. Sarah listened carefully as Rodriguez explained that the enemy personnel had spent considerable time searching through Team Charlie's equipment and documents. They had focused particularly on intelligence reports and communication logs, suggesting they were seeking specific information rather than simply trying to eliminate the SEAL presence. This revelation added another dimension to Sarah's analysis of the situation. If the enemy had been conducting an intelligence-gathering operation rather than a simple attack, it suggested they were part of a larger network with sophisticated objectives and capabilities. The second helicopter to arrive carried intelligence specialists and additional security personnel. Sarah briefed the intelligence team on her observations and turned over the materials she had collected. The specialists immediately began their analysis, using portable equipment to examine captured communications devices and other evidence. While the intelligence team worked, Sarah coordinated with Commander Morrison to establish improved security for the island. The night's battle had demonstrated that the location was more vulnerable than previously understood, and additional defensive measures would be necessary to prevent future attacks. Admiral, we're recommending that Team Charlie be permanently relocated to a more secure facility, Morrison reported after consulting with his security specialists. This position has been compromised, and the enemy clearly has detailed knowledge of our operations here. Sarah concurred with Morrison's recommendation. The island had served its purpose as a clandestine observation post, but the enemy's successful attack had eliminated its effectiveness for covert operations. More importantly, the intelligence gathered during the battle suggested that other SEAL positions in the region might also be at risk. As the day progressed, additional aircraft arrived with senior officers, intelligence analysts, and specialized equipment for processing the captured materials. Sarah found herself at the center of a rapidly expanding operation as military leaders recognized the broader implications of what had occurred on the disputed island. Admiral Robert Hayes, Sarah's mentor and immediate superior, arrived on the third helicopter of the day. His presence indicated that senior military leadership was taking the situation very seriously and that Sarah's actions had attracted attention at the highest levels. "Sarah, what you accomplished here is extraordinary," Hayes said as they walked through the battle site together. "But I need you to understand that this is just the beginning. The intelligence we're gathering suggests this attack was part of a much larger operation targeting American Special Operations Forces throughout the region." Sarah listened as Hayes explained that similar probing actions had been detected at other locations where SEAL teams were deployed. The attack on Team Charlie appeared to be one element of a coordinated campaign designed to test American capabilities and gather intelligence about special operations procedures. "Sir, what are our next steps?" Sarah asked, already anticipating that her routine inspection tour had become something much more significant. Hayes' response confirmed Sarah's expectations. You're going to be leading a task force to assess security at all our regional facilities and coordinate our response to this threat. Your performance here has demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership and tactical expertise we need for this mission. The assignment represented a significant expansion of Sarah's responsibilities and authority. Instead of simply returning to her normal duties after completing the inspection tour, she would be taking command of a critical operation with regional and potentially strategic implications. Over the following hours, Sarah worked with the intelligence analysts to piece together a comprehensive picture of what they had discovered. The enemy communications equipment revealed connections to a sophisticated network that extended far beyond the single island where the battle had taken place. Intercepted messages suggested coordinated operations planned for multiple locations across the region. The tactical analysis of the enemy's approach and equipment provided equally concerning insights. The hostile force had demonstrated knowledge of SEAL procedures, equipment, and capabilities that could only have come from detailed study and possibly insider information. This suggested either a significant intelligence breach or the involvement of adversaries with extensive knowledge of American special operations. "Admiral, we need to brief higher headquarters on these findings immediately," said Captain Lisa Park, the senior intelligence officer who had flown in to coordinate the analysis. "The scope of what we're seeing here requires immediate attention from national security leadership." Sarah agreed with Park's assessment and began preparing the comprehensive briefing that would be delivered to senior military and civilian officials. The document would need to convey not only the tactical details of the night's battle, but also the broader strategic implications of what they had discovered. As Sarah worked on the briefing, she reflected on how dramatically her mission had evolved. What had begun as a routine inspection tour had revealed a serious threat to American Special Operations Forces and had resulted in her assignment to lead the military's response to that threat. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, despite his wounds, insisted on contributing to the intelligence analysis before his medical evacuation. His first-hand observations of the enemy's capabilities and procedures provided crucial details that enhanced the overall assessment. "Admiral, the enemy knew things they shouldn't have known," Rodriguez reported during his final briefing. "They knew our communication schedules, our patrol patterns, and our standard defensive procedures. This wasn't just good reconnaissance. They had access to information that should have been classified." Rodriguez's observations reinforced the growing evidence that the attack on Team Charlie was part of a sophisticated intelligence operation. The implications for operational security at other facilities were serious and required immediate attention. As evening approached, Sarah prepared to depart the island with the intelligence materials and evidence that had been collected. The site would remain under military control while additional analysis was conducted, but her presence was needed at regional headquarters to coordinate the broader response to the threat they had discovered. Before leaving, Sarah took a final walk through the areas where the night's battle had taken place. The physical evidence of the engagement was being carefully preserved for further analysis. But Sarah wanted to ensure she hadn't missed any important details that might affect future operations. The scene reminded her of the intense combat she had experienced during her early career as an operator. The precision required, the split-second decision-making, and the absolute commitment to mission success had all been necessary for the night's success. The experience had reminded her why she had chosen the path of a warrior and why those skills remained relevant even at the highest levels of military leadership. As Sarah's helicopter lifted off from the island, she could see the continued activity below as military personnel completed their analysis of the battle site. The work would continue for days as experts extracted every possible piece of intelligence from what had occurred. During the flight back to regional headquarters, Sarah used the time to finalize her briefing materials and begin planning for the expanded mission she had been assigned. The task force she would lead would need to assess security at dozens of facilities across multiple countries, coordinate with allied forces, and develop new procedures to counter the sophisticated threats they had identified. The mission would require all of Sarah's skills as both a warrior and a leader. She would need to think strategically about the broader threat while maintaining the tactical expertise necessary to protect American personnel in vulnerable positions around the region. When Sarah's helicopter landed at the regional command center, she was met by a full complement of senior officers and intelligence officials who were eager to be briefed on her discoveries. The battle on the disputed island had captured the attention of military leadership throughout the Pacific region and beyond. Admiral Hayes met Sarah at the landing pad and accompanied her to the secure briefing facility, where she would present her findings to the assembled leadership. "Sarah, what you did on that island was remarkable, but what you discovered there may be even more important. The intelligence community believes this could be the beginning of a major shift in how our adversaries are approaching special operations." As Sarah entered the briefing room and faced the assembled officers, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the small town in Oregon where she had first dreamed of military service, through the challenges of SEAL training and years of operational deployments, to the senior leadership positions she now held, every experience had prepared her for moments like this. The battle on the disputed island had tested every skill she had developed and every lesson she had learned. More importantly, it had revealed a threat that required the same kind of courage, determination, and tactical excellence that had defined her entire career. As Sarah began her briefing, she knew that the real work was just beginning. The enemy had revealed their capabilities and intentions, but they had also underestimated the response they would face. Admiral Sarah Chen and the task force she would lead were prepared to meet this challenge with the same deadly precision she had demonstrated in the darkness of a single night on a disputed island in the South China Sea. The enemy had learned a harsh lesson about what happened when they threatened American warriors. Now it was time to ensure that lesson was remembered throughout the region and beyond. Sarah's reputation as a leader and warrior had been forged over 2 decades of service, but her legend had been secured in the darkness of one extraordinary night when she had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. The SEAL Admiral had indeed wiped out enemy positions in darkness, but more importantly, she had demonstrated that American Special Operations Forces remained the most capable and determined warriors in the world. The enemy's mistake had been thinking they could challenge that supremacy. Sarah Chen had reminded them why that was never a good idea.